Well, hello, my name is Shawn Wallace, and I am the CEO and Chairman of Torq Resources. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to tell you about our company today. Now, Torq Resources is a junior mining exploration company focused on the exploration of major gold, copper, porphyry targets in Chile. During this presentation, I'm going to be making some forward-looking statements, and we rely on these cautionary notes here for that. Now, it's really important for the Torq story to understand about the location of it. Torq's project, the Santa Cecilia project, is located on the Maricunga belt. And in the Maricunga, as well as a couple other belts in Chile, are host to some of the most important major deposits. And pretty much every major mining company in the world has some sort of a presence or asset in one of the major belts in Chile. In our case, right next door, we've got the Norte Abierto joint venture, which is owned by American Barrick and Newmont. And within all the different deposits within that, and we'll get a little more granular on that as the presentation unfolds, you've got in excess of 50 million ounces of gold, 20 billion pounds of copper. And so there's a tremendous a lot of resources up here. Our project, the Santa Cecilia, sort of sits smack dab in the middle of it. And historically, this asset was held privately by a very influential and successful Chilean mining entrepreneur named Mario Hernandez. Now, Mario was responsible for discovering and selling to a lot of the major companies, a lot of these mines that I mentioned just a moment ago. So it was very, very fortunate for Torq when we came across Mario back in the around 2019, and we discovered that this project was available. So what we're looking at here is a major gold, copper, porphyry opportunity. Now, Mario was able to sort of approach this thing in a little less traditional manner. He didn't do all the early stage work that people do. He just saw all the success that was happening around him with the Caspiche, with Cerro Casale, and some of the other deposits that are contained in that joint venture that I mentioned with Newmont and Barrick. And he just drilled a couple holes. And one of them was 925 meters of about 0.45 gold equivalent. And so it was fantastic. Anytime you get that kind of mineralization over a large area, particularly when it's flanked, if you will, by these other major deposits, you really have to get in there and do some more work. So we were successful at acquiring the project by about 2019, 2020. And obviously, we were in a dreadful junior mining market, and it's sort of something that has plagued us along with this project. It was sort of ironic to have this amazing asset come at sort of perhaps one of the worst times in history for junior mining. But nevertheless, we have persevered and managed to hold on to this project. And over the last few years, we've executed 3 drill programs, 2 as Torq Resources and 1 as part of our joint venture with Goldfields. Now, a little bit on the Goldfields arrangement. When we first announced we had acquired the project, Goldfields was right on the phone that immediately, and they definitely had their eye on this asset, and it was something that they wanted to be involved with. At that time, the things hadn't deteriorated so bad in the junior market, and we negotiated with them the opportunity for them to be a stakeholder, and so they purchased about 15% of the company at $1 was the share price at the time. That represented 15% of the company. They put $15 million in at $1, and with that shareholders' right agreement, they have the right to maintain that 15% ownership. So they're a great shareholder, and so after that, we took that capital and went and started doing the work. Now, and I'll get into a little more of the details with the work, but obviously Mario had just pounded 2 holes into this thing, made it very interesting, massive, width of consistent mineralization. But we had to dial it back before we could go up there and drill ourselves. So we immediately undertook to do all that early stage exploration work, targeting, geophysics, geochemistry, mapping, and see what else was available in this project. So whilst we were doing that, of course, the mining market continued to deteriorate. And, this is a big project, and Mario's a shrewd businessman. So it's an expensive project. We had some big payments and so forth. And it became very apparent to the board of directors and Torq management that perhaps the way forward would be a little unconventional for us in any event. And we got into a joint venture agreement with Goldfields. So Goldfields currently is earning a 75% interest in the Santa Cecilia project by expending $48 million US over a number of years. Now we're just about a year into that arrangement, and thus far they've spent about $7 million US. That was the first phase of drilling that I'll discuss here as we go forward, and we're just about to get going on our second phase, which will be approximately $11 million. US dollars of a second phase of drilling as part of the joint venture, and it will be the fourth phase of drilling since Torq showed up in 2019. So it's fantastic. We're very excited about this. We're going to be going with 2 drills, and we're really quite optimistic about what's possible here. Quickly, we've drilled 10 holes since we got there. Every single one of them has hit something. The majority of it was very interesting. And most importantly, we've now outlined 3 separate porphyry deposits. So 3 which to follow up. And we've got about 3 or 4 new targets that were developed by our surface geophysical and mapping work, as I mentioned when we first acquired the project. So we sort of got a lot of work ahead of us, and we're really looking forward to the program as it comes up in the fall. Now, one of the key factors on this project, it's great to have good assets, but if you don't have the right people working them, then things can go horribly awry. We are very fortunate to have Waldo Quadra and Javier Rojas and Pierre Palisac amongst many others. I know these gentlemen have all worked together for over 30, 40 years. They were actually the finder on an asset that we've since dropped, but that's how we got to know them. And it was during COVID, and it was great. We sort of met each other on Zoom. Ordinarily we would have been on planes down there, but we really had to trust in this team, and they really helped guide us to making these acquisitions. Name it in this industry, the things that you need to do. These guys have done it. They know more about Chile. They've forgotten more about Chile than I'll ever know. And they've worked for major mining companies, juniors. They've built mines. They've found mines. It's just really quite a real wealth of breadth of experience. And in fact, as part of the joint venture, Goldfields was actually quite insistent that it be our team that would work this project. So it's fantastic. We have a good synergies with our joint venture partner, and we've definitely got the right team in place. Myself, I've worked for many years, 35, 40 years now in mining exploration. Only had to build one mine so far, or be on a team that built one mine. Obviously, no one does anything by themselves. And, I've been very fortunate. I worked on Mount Milligan, Camas, Pebble. These are all big gold copper porphyries. Shatongman, that was in Tibet, another big porphyry. Prosperity, they called it. We called it Fish Lake when I was working on it. It's called Prosperity now here in BC. And these big projects, they all these have become mines, and so I've been able to be there from discovery to, usually we sell the asset. Great day for our shareholders. You sell them at a premium, major mining companies. It moves the needle for the major mining companies. And, from where we sit on the food chain as an exploration company that really doesn't have a big interest in building mines, nor do we have the skill set or the breadth of experience in order to do so. We're constructed completely to find an undervalued asset, add value, and then transact that. And certainly that is our goal here at Torq. So back to Santa Cecilia, and again, a little more granular here. You can see on the screen here, in that sort of a bluish green hue, that is the outline of the Norte Abierto joint venture. And you'll see some of the descriptors on there. You can see that, these are a well thought out package by the major. They've already done the engineering to figure out where their water would be, where the concentrate would come. And, smack dab in the middle of it, you can see Santa Cecilia, Caspiche being the closest to us. There's literally and there's some pictures ahead here that are going to illustrate this even better. But it's just fantastic to be located where we are. Same geological event, same mineralizing events as Caspice. It's obviously just a man-made border here. Mother Nature didn't put claims out in space, and we've been able to use some of the geological talent that had worked at Caspice previously in order to sort of see where the analogs lie. And it's been really fantastic at helping us have efficient and sort of governing our way forward. We're a really very technically driven group. We let the technical aspects tell us what to do next. It's the way it should be. That's how you come out with the best result. During this time, however, we were able to uncover about 7 targets. So that's really important. We acquired it with 1, did a bunch of work. Now we've got 7. Really, the job for the company now is to just drill this thing off. And we're going to find millions and millions of ounces of gold. I mean, that's just obvious. If you look at the 10 drill holes we have, you have hundreds and hundreds, 600-700 meters here, 900 meters there, 500 meters there. And with good space in between them. Obviously, that's going to fill millions of ounces of gold, billions of pounds of copper in between. What's our job here is to find the grade, find the heat source, find the place, that starter pit that takes this thing and turns it on its head and makes this project economic, frankly, and that's the goal. Picture's worth 1,000 words. Essentially, from the perspective of this picture, this is a geologist standing on the drill hole, that 925 meter hole. You can see Caspice off in the distance, and those purple stars show, and we've drilled these now and intercepted good grades and widths of gold copper mineralization at Picas Norte, Gemelas Norte, Picas Sur, and Gemelas Sur. And these are, look how they're so proximal to Caspice. Obviously, what a person could envision this, there's will be a lot of development synergies going forward. Another good thing to note is the permissive and sort of gentle topography here. I will mention, however, this project is located at 3,500 to 4,000 meters, depending on where on the project you are, and so that is considered high altitude, and there's some inefficiencies in terms of how equipment works. But this is something that is dealt with customarily in Chile. It's not a big deal. We have the know-how to make it work. Water is another thing that's very dear up here. The company has a long-term community agreement. Now, there's no community living right proximal to the mine, but a community that would be called the affected community that would have rights here. We signed a 7-year deal with them. It takes us right up to probably a production decision. They're being great at, they are the ones who provide us our water, and we employ a number of people from the community, and thus far it's just been a fantastic relationship. So I'll go to the next slide, and we can go in a little bit closer. We can look at, again, this really illustrates how close Caspice, we see outlined here on the right-hand side in that sort of gold hue. And then you've got Pircas Norte, Serra de Mario, Las Pircas, Gemelas, and Gemelas Norte. And again, none of this was known before we got there. Mapping, geochem, we had one target, boom, all of a sudden you have, a multitude of targets to go try and drill. And every time we put a drill into this thing, we have good times. So, I'm just trying to share why am I so excited about what's going to happen here this November when we go back and drill. Each time we step out, things continue to get better, continue to get stronger. It continues to rationalize why we're expending capital, why we're, putting all this effort into to make this project work. I think the payoff is massive. You look at in this market right now they're quite a bit ahead of us. But I remember as an anecdote, when I worked on Northern Dynasty, before they had found the high grade at Northern Dynasty, everyone said, "Oh, it's too low grade. It's big, but it's massive, right?" And Northern Dynasty finally found their heat source. And there's always going to be a heat source. Where the risks lie is, where's that heat source located? What's the geometry of it? Is it held together enough to make that starter pit for you? And if you have one target, then I guess maybe it is or maybe it isn't, but we've got 3 or 4. So only one of them has to work. And it's amazing on these big projects like this, if you can get that payback, that starter pit, brings everything else into the fold. And I think it can have so we've got not one, but 3 or 4 opportunities to find that heat source, and for it to have it be of a geometry and of a depth that makes this thing work. So it's fantastic. I'm used to just going to these things and having maybe 1, maybe 2 targets like that. And we still haven't tested all of our raw targets. So I'm very, very optimistic that we will find that heat source. And as soon as that happens, now you look at Northern Dynasty. I'm not saying we're going to have this market cap, but they are now a $2 billion market cap, and they're still a pre-fees level company. They haven't built the mine. They're not in production, and so it just shows you how they scale the wall of doubt, and you stick to it. I mean, when we worked on Kemess, it was hole 115, I believe, that made it economic. So when you're in a big system like this, you have to keep going. You have to have the belief, and you have to be steadfast. And that's certainly what we're going to do. And that's certainly what Gold Fields has signed up for as well. Again, we're just going to zoom in a little bit here on the project, and I won't belabor this too much with the time I've got allotted. Certainly this presentation will be on the website, and anyone who wants to take their time can certainly go peruse it all, as well as the news releases. But again, it's all proximal. It's fantastic. It's just, again, some sections, tells you a little bit about how this comes together. I want to get to a slide here. Gemelas Norte, we're using the alteration in the rocks is helping us guide us towards the heat source. Again, I won't go get too technical on you here, but certain alterations, as they intensify, it allows you to know that you're getting closer to that pipe, that geological event that was responsible for the entire deposit. And again, Gemelas. Cerro del Medio, this is a little bit of an example of what can happen, and I'll tie this together as an example to Caspiche just to really illustrate the point. And on the far right here, you can see the 925 meters, 0.21 gold, 0.27 copper that Mario had drilled, and then we drilled 2 holes. Now there's 700 meters between our hole number 2 and the hole that he had drilled in the early 2000s. And you can see we got 557 meters of 0.38 gold and 0.23 copper. So that was, that's a 60 or 70% gold grade increase. We also saw extensive strengthening of the alteration model. We also know, though, by having Caspiche as an analog, that we're not in enough of intensity of alteration to be in the mineralizing event. And we can illustrate that further here on this slide. And you can see how Caspiche, they were out on the flanks. They were getting 0.35 gold, 0.5 copper, 0.44. And then finally they hit their causative intrusion. They got 1,000 meters of 0.9 gold, 0.33. Game over. Now you've got a mine. So we're going to continue to drill along in that direction that we've outlined, where we can find that grade. We're going to use that same methodology and thinking, alteration models, to do it on the other targets as well. Again, and in terms of depth, sometimes people get an idea on these projects that things are deep. Things are not deep. It's the way you drill them and where you have permitting. So we have to go off to the side, put the thing on an angle, makes it appear deeper than it is. You can see in the middle here some of these porphyry. They look like little fingers. I'll call them fingers. These stages of porphyry, they come up, they surface. We've sampled them at surface. So we know when we go to build a pit, we're going to have a lot more of this mineralization that sits closer to the surface. It's just more efficient for drilling, particularly when you're just trying to get a feel for the system, to put it on that angle and try and cross as many structures as you can, so that you can really sort of bird dog it down to that high grade that we're looking for here. So there's still $41 million remaining to be spent on the project, not 32 as this thing is saying. It's wrong. We got 3 porphyry discoveries in less than 10 or 11 drill holes, and we're about to get drilling here in here this November. So it's fantastic. We're all very excited. And of course, we have those other targets that we will be continuing to develop. What's really important to underpin here is the major mining companies need projects like this. This is what moves the needle for them, particularly now when you see what's happening in the market. The gold price or whatever, you can be sure that they're turning up the volume on every mine that they have, making certain that they capitalize on these gold prices while they can. But that creates this very, very desperate need to replace those projects. There's a handful of companies developing projects that have the sort of size and scale that can deliver, that can meet that need for the majors. And here we are sitting there. We've got Gold Fields as a partner, and we're surrounded by Barrick and Newmont. I think it's a pretty good setup for us as a little junior. At the end of it, we'll have 25% interest after the $48 million US is spent by Gold Fields. I think during that, the amount of value that can be created by that joint venture and that can trickle down to Torq is big compared to our $20 million market cap we have here now. I think that the value proposition for investors is pretty compelling. We'll be starting with 2 drills, and please stay tuned for updates from us. A little bit about the share structure. Got about 185 million shares out, 320 fully diluted. Again, Gold Fields is a big shareholder. I'm a big shareholder. You may be familiar with our group from the Keegan and Caden and all those days. Certainly all the people that support us through those successes have maintained their shareholding. And frankly, during the tough times, they were the ones that continued to keep the company afloat. Management is invested heavily in this project. I know I personally am. I currently work without a salary. I like this project so much. The dedication by everyone on our team has certainly been tried and tested throughout the bad market, and we're all breathing a bit of a sigh of relief now that things have turned, and we have an opportunity to perhaps deliver for our long-suffering shareholders, and certainly that's what we're focused on doing. So the company is at www.torqresources.com. Please go check the website, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call in to the company and either speak to myself or the good folks at Kin Communications with whom we work closely for our investor relations and public relations duties. So thank you very much for your time today. My name is Shawn Wallace, and I appreciate your attention.